Welcome back. We are back with a, I think, expected panel about EU regulation. I know we already talked about EU regulation, but that is a very important topic right now, and it will be very important in the near future. So on this panel, I'm welcoming Bertrand Huet, who kicks off the panel with an overview of the future European international policy landscape for crypto assets. I'm also welcoming Marina, Markezic, Anne-Sophie Cissey, and Pierre Gérard, and we will be joined really soon by Ceyssen from the European Commission. We will be a little bit late because of its train, so he will join us soon. Thank you very much to all our panelists. Ouais, avance, retour. Et il y a un timer que tu verras.
Ok, ça marche comme ça?
Et sinon, je fais des grands signes. Ouais.
Okay. Good morning, still everyone. Thank you, Faustine. As Faustine said, just kicking off this panel discussion with a picture of what is to come still in terms of policy initiatives in Europe and also internationally. It will be a high-level summary. There's quite a lot to cover. And just to kick off, really, I'm still surprised when speaking to members of the crypto community that many people still see MiCA as, and you could say the transfer of fund regulation also, as a kind of finish line. There's been an agreement, that's it, we're done. And when I have this conversation, I often quote the famous Winston Churchill quote, which I'll try now. Now is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning. So, starting with a first look at the European landscape and the core crypto landscape in Europe, we've had, as you know, political agreement reached for MiCA and the transfer fund regulation. That's the level 1 phase in EU jargon speak. But there is a lot more to come as part of what we call the level 2 phase, which is basically the technical implementation phase, and that will kick off early next year, probably, once these regulations are published in the official journal of the EU. And here we will see a flurry of activity from European agencies, in particular the European Banking Authority and the European Securities Market Authority, to develop so-called technical standards, and they will complement the legislation that's been agreed by the EU institutions. And there are still some very important aspects to be developed there. For example, in MiCA, there will be technical standards to specify the information that a CASP needs to provide for its application for authorization. There will be standards to develop the methodology used to monitor whether a stable coin value exceeds the 100 million threshold euro, to determine liquidity of reserve assets. And that's just 3 examples of probably around 100 or so technical standards still to be developed. MiCA also, very importantly, establishes a structured way to monitor crypto market developments going forward, with a Commission annual review that is foreseen in the regulation, and then, of course, a report and potential initiative to bring about MiCA 2. A lot of topics to be debated there, and among which the very hotly debated already topics of decentralized finance and NFTs. On transfer fund regulation, there are dozens of guidelines to come from the European Banking Authority and the Data Protection Authority in Europe, with, of course, a lot of discussions around the coexistence of the TFR rules with data privacy in particular, but not just. And whilst perhaps not core to crypto, but really the crypto-related aspects are so important for the framework of crypto regulation in general in Europe. Of course, the AML, anti-money laundering package, which is still under negotiation, and we'll see fundamental changes in the way CASPs are supervised, or some of them at least, by the future AML authority to be set up. Also, new obligations, due diligence, and others coming from being designated an obliged entity, and some discussions even at the moment in Parliament pushing to include NFT service providers as part of obliged entities. So that's for the core crypto. If we move to the peripheral world of European initiatives on the table or to come, there's going to be quite a lot there also to keep an eye on if you want to really get a global picture of the entire framework impacting the crypto industry. In terms of what we already have on the table, we've got the implementation of the DLT pilot regime that will be starting soon, and there may be some level playing field implications for native crypto market participants in that context. We've got ongoing negotiations of the European capital requirement framework in Europe, where some MEPs are thinking of using that opportunity to front-run Basel international standards that are being developed on the topic for the prudential treatment of bank exposures to crypto assets. There's the broader data agenda that was mentioned before, the Data Act. There are some important requirements in there to promote the interoperability of smart contracts, for example, to facilitate data sharing. I could have put in artificial intelligence as well. In terms of what is to come, taxation, that is a member state competency, of course, but Europe does have the power to organize how tax information is shared between member state tax authorities. That's called the DAC, Directive for Administrative Cooperation, and on the 18th of November, the Commission will propose to update that directive, DAC 8, it will be called, to address crypto assets specifically. Sanctions, another hot topic. There was already a plan for the Commission in its strategic autonomy communication in 2021 to actually look at potential threats of circumvention of sanctions using crypto market. That's been brought forward, of course, with the war in Ukraine. The question remains as to whether there will be more to come on that front from the Commission, bearing in mind a lot of it has already been covered as part of the 5th sanctions package against Russia that was issued a few months ago. And let's not forget that issue was also picked up in the transfer of fund regulation. There's a specific provision that was added to require CASPs to mitigate risk of non-implementation and evasion of financial sanctions. Then we'll have what I call kind of the digital finance Part 2 package coming with a revision to the Payment Services Directive, a proposal on open finance from the Commission, and also, of course, a digital euro, and all of which will, in different ways, raise interesting challenges in terms of the interaction of those initiatives with MiCA and the broader cryptocurrency ecosystem in particular. And last but not least, we heard from the Ministre Délégué this morning, top of the agenda, sustainability. That was a massive political issue during the negotiations on MiCA, including some attempts, I'm sure you know, to ban proof of work mechanisms. The agreement reached in the end only requires disclosure based on technical standard. That'll be another one that ESMA will have to develop on the sustainability of different consensus mechanisms used in the industry, and of course all of that taking place in the midst of the energy crisis we have. So, and finally, to wrap up on this introduction, another, and I mention it because I do think it is a potential game changer for crypto policy in the coming 2 years. That will come from the international standard setting community, and I say potential game changer. It does matter because history shows that these standards, whilst they are not binding, they do tend to find their way back into national or European frameworks when there are revisions to MiCA in that case in particular. So last month we saw another flurry of activity from that community. I mentioned Basel standards that are being developed on the prudential treatment of crypto assets, banks' exposure to crypto assets. On the FATF, you're all familiar with it. On the market side, maybe less familiar for some of you, the International Organization of Securities Commissioners, so that's AMF type of commissioners around the world, getting together and issuing a roadmap 2 weeks ago that announces the creation of 2 working groups who will seek to develop international standards on 2 areas, one on sort of general crypto asset standards and the other one on DeFi specifically. To conclude, I think we are entering, as an industry, a multi-dimensional policy environment for the European industry in the next 2 years. On the one hand, there are initiatives like MiCA and TFR that are entering the technical implementation phase. You have then initiatives like the AML negotiations that are still in the political negotiation phase. Then you have initiatives like Digital Euro, which are more in the agenda setting phase. And with now this international overlay with development of standards across banking and markets and money laundering that the industry needs to begin to engage with. And all of this in the context of very challenging market conditions, as we know, and still some work to do from the industry on reassuring policymakers on some of the reputational concerns that they have with the sector. So I'll stop here. That was just to really provide a general overview as context for the panel discussion. We're still missing our... we're still missing our commission participant, but hopefully he'll arrive very soon. So, MiCA, what's next? We thought that actually you can't really look at what next for MiCA after MiCA unless we actually look at getting some reactions initially on MiCA itself, and TFR we should include. So I wanted to start maybe with you, Pierre, as a more on the analytics side of things, how you're seeing these two major pieces of regulation impact the sector.
Yeah, thank you first of all to be here today. MiCA is good. Yeah, it's good to have regulation for sure. We are a crypto AML provider, so we are expecting to get a clear regulation, clear rules that will apply to our customers. So it will be easier for us to implement these rules in our services, and we are delivering a software and including or risk scenarios and requirements from the regulators. So MiCA is bringing some harmonization, which is good because it can clarify the landscape in Europe. In the meantime, we can wonder if it's not too early. There's still a lot of development that need to be done, and no, at the beginning of the internet, there was a lot of competition between all the countries in Europe. You know, countries like Luxembourg and Ireland who did a lot to attract businesses. So the point for us, for the ecosystem, not as a provider, because as a provider, okay, it will be easier for us to develop only one software that we can sell in the all EU. But in terms of yes, competition, how we can develop the ecosystem, could be maybe a little bit early, and we also know that we are talking about MiCA 2, and on one end, crypto has no value from, like this is what said Christine Lagarde, and 2 weeks later she said, okay, we need MiCA 2 to regulate staking and new crypto. So it's still an ecosystem that is not well defined, and also we need to understand the underlying technology, and because this new technology can be also a huge opportunity to facilitate the implementation of regulation, I think.
Thanks very much, Pierre. So from a CAS perspective, Anne-Sophie, what's your take on where the opportunities and on what the initial reactions on MiCA and TFR?
Actually, we were glad to see that new regulation, creating harmonization, like you were saying, Pierre, it's really important for us. We are market makers, so our clients are from anywhere in the world. My exposure is really international, and every time a new national regulation is being voted, I have to comply with it because I have some clients in this area. So with one regulation for 25 or 27 states, it's really great for us. So yeah, it's really also an opportunity because regarding also from business perspective, since there are some liquidity requirements who are being decided by MiCA, I know that we will have more and more clients. So we are kind of happy to see it. However, like every time we have a regulation, there's also some threats. For new clients, for example, when you launch a project and you have to comply with regulation, you have to get a compliance officer, you have to comply with tools who are sometimes quite expensive, and doing KYC, etc. It can be like a threat to your business, and it will be like a barrier to entry as a new crypto area. So maybe we will see less and less new projects being launched in Europe and more in the BVI, in Seychelles, in Cayman Islands, just because they won't be able to comply with what we impose here.
I'm glad the Commission is not here to hear that, and that's fine. Carry on.
Yeah, we have to see the truth, actually. If we are just pragmatic, like what we are when you're an entrepreneur, you have to decide where you will conduct your business, and you run the blockchain, so you can conduct it from anywhere, actually. Even if I wanted to move my company, I can move it to where I want. It depends on the market, so you just like to see an opportunity where there is one. And I know that more and more, also in the Cayman Islands, we saw some regulation being directed there. So more and more it will get regulated, even if people don't want it. However, we still have, it's really a huge step between what we had here in France with the DASP regulation and what we see with MiCA. I know that it will be hard, regarding also your technology. When you want also to be resilient, it's really expensive. And at some point, you won't have the money for it.
But overall, do you think MiCA is actually going to help you as, French origin CASP or VASP, in terms of competition from international players? Is this helpful, not making a difference, or unhelpful overall?
I think it's helpful because more and more companies are just telling us that they had problems with our competitors who are not regulated, and it's the truth because they don't have any rules, regarding the contract laws, the liabilities, etc., that we see in traditional finance. You don't have it in the DASP, with the DASP. So yeah, we get some clients from there, and seeing a bear market, you see also the big monster we knew. That being regulated, we also have some kind of overview by our government on how we are conducting our business and how we manage our treasury. Also, they were quite anxious to see what we were doing with the terror. So who had exposure on it, etc., and how did we manage to safeguard our clients? So for us, it wasn't really a subject, but I know that for some DASP it was, and it was kind of reassuring for people and for clients to see that, yeah, we complied with regulation, and it's a safer place to just sing with us, even if we are regulated, even if we need to be transparent, etc.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Sophie. So, Marina, you've been engaged with the MiCA negotiation, TFR negotiations since the beginning. You're one of the co-founders of the European Crypto Initiative in Brussels. What's your take on the pros and cons of where the agreement has finally landed on MiCA and TFR as well?
Thank you, Bertie. So as you said, we've been there from the beginning. This is from 2020 in September, when the first draft was issued by the European Commission. And when Simon Porot, you well know him, he unfortunately could not be here with us today, and another co-founder, Florian Gratz, we saw this draft. We were thinking, okay, we need to do something about it. We want to engage with the European regulators, because now the discussion is going to be on the EU level, not anymore on the national level. So one of the pros, for sure, is the unification, in a way, of a regulation on crypto assets. What we have seen before, and also here France is a really good example, you have a regulation on crypto assets. You have already also AML regulation, but there's many countries in the EU that don't have anything, and there's a lot of legal uncertainty. The projects that would want to enter those markets don't know really how to do that, and of course is also very fragmented. So this is definitely a pro, and we are happy that the European Union has reached this political agreement on MiCA. But at the same time, of course, there's a lot of challenges that are still ahead of us. A lot of things has been agreed, but let's think about, let's say, the most innovative use cases, like DeFi and NFTs. At the beginning of the draft, that was not the main part of MiCA. The main idea of MiCA at the beginning was really to regulate stablecoins, which has been done. But at the same time, you know, the market changes so quickly, especially in crypto, and we have seen new developments. Welcome. We have seen the new developments in DeFi, NFTs, and especially this idea of decentralization of decentralized projects could be quite challenging if we think about regulating it and how to regulate this. So I think, especially in the last part of the MiCA negotiations, there's been a lot of discussion about NFTs, for example, how to regulate those. As a European Crypto Initiative, we are happy that NFTs are excluded from the scope of MiCA, but the devil is in the details, of course. It is very important how NFTs are defined in MiCA and what an NFT is from the legal perspective. So I think that we're going to have a lot of discussions with the community, with all the other crypto asset service providers to understand what is really an NFT, what could be excluded from this regulation, and what is something that needs to be regulated. And I'm sure we're going to talk about DeFi later in this panel, but that's something that is also very important for the future. We have heard the calls for MiCA 2 or for regulating DeFi. Maybe just a comment here. If we think about blockchain in general, and especially permissionless blockchain, it is something that we have seen the first time in history to have some entities, organizations that are decentralized. And from the beginning of the law, of the existence of law, we regulated centralized entities. So it is a challenge if we think about how to regulate decentralized autonomous organizations, decentralized finance, and we hope that in the future, when we are going to regulate DeFi, we're going to also look into the technical aspects and also to think about what are the advantages that blockchain can bring also from the regulatory point of view.
Great. So, Jan, welcome. All the moaning about MiCA has been done. Don't worry. No. It's actually been very balanced. We're doing a round about, you know, the pros and cons, initial reactions on MiCA. You know, congratulations on getting the deal through. I know with your colleagues from the Parliament and the French presidency. Maybe if I could ask, you know, on that specifically, and I know there's still a lot of detail to come out from the drafting, but in terms of the overall political agreement, you know, what is it from the initial Commission proposal that you're, you know, particularly pleased is, you know, has been achieved? Is there anything you're, you know, disappointed and has not necessarily, you know, made it through from the initial proposal, or your initial, you know, reaction on that agreement? It would be great to all, you know, hear that from you. Thanks.
Now it seems to work, exactly. So yes, indeed. Apologies for the slight delay. I think even if you discuss about digital, sometimes very mundane things like train delays are still relevant. No, thanks indeed, Bertie. So I'm first of all happy that there's such a huge interest here also on this topic. As you said, indeed, we've now recently closed the MiCA negotiations, and I think that's first of all good news in the sense that there will now be clarity. The legal text still need to be finalized, but I think, of course, for many people in the space, it's just important to know what will come, and I think that will now be clear. I think overall we are quite actually very satisfied with the outcome. I mean, let's not forget and let's take a step back. It will be the first time, indeed, that a major jurisdiction has really a dedicated regulatory framework. I think it's quite a proportionate one, and it allows you indeed then as a company with one authorization, one license in one member state indeed to market across all 27 member states, to have legal clarity indeed. You may not always like all the details and the outcomes, but at least it's clear. I think we don't like all the details either, but at least it's clear. I think we have a quite proportionate framework for crypto assets here on the table, of course. Compliance is sometimes painful, especially in a space which was so far unregulated partly, but I think it is still a quite proportionate framework. I think we have also a good basis for stablecoins also to develop in Europe and in the EU in a sound and solid manner, I would say, with also public trust and confidence, which I think we've all seen you also need to get these going. We have also for the first time indeed tackled the environmental issues which are coming up in every debate, and you know that as me actually every single time you discuss crypto assets with whoever in the general public. I think so we are basing the approach here on disclosures, public disclosures. I think that's also a good and important approach, and in that sense also a global first. And I should add, we have also on the part of the anti-money laundering rules, the travel rule implementation, we have strict requirements. Again, will not be always easy on that side, but I think they are workable, they can work the way they are now agreed, so I think that's also a positive side. So on that positive note, I would say it's now clear where the direction on regulatory stuff goes in Europe. I think that's not necessarily the case in a couple of other jurisdictions yet. And I think it's now important indeed to work on the implementation, which I think will always be a challenge with these huge new pieces of legislation for the firms who are in that, but also for the authorities, I think, which will have to indeed also increase and beef up their crypto knowledge. So I think that's what we should now focus on.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, I mean, now let's look forward a little bit more, and you know, if we think of some of the key challenges and opportunities for the sector, you know, what do you see as, you know, the sort of top priority issues that the sector really needs to focus on? You mentioned, you know, DeFi earlier, environment. You know, you just said it. We heard the new French ministre délégué also on this morning. NFTs, of course, situation. So I don't know, maybe Marina, do you want to kind of give us a sort of, you know, take it forward a little bit on DeFi or other challenges that you think, also from a supervisory perspective, interaction with the regulatory community, that's constantly evolving environment. You know, how do we join up as an industry with the policymaker community in a way that is, you know, helpful to all?
Yes, for sure. So first, the historic view on MiCA in these 2 years, as I said before. At the beginning, even NFTs were not such an important topic because they were not so popular. But right now, and especially in the last phase, as I said, they have been addressed also in MiCA. And I think what is important is that, at least from our point of view, a lot of the national competent authorities are going to have a big role to play in this part in MiCA, because they are going to be the one that are going to give permission to crypto as a service providers for different services. And I think this is very important when we think about challenging definitions about decentralization, as I said before, DAOs, DeFi, and also what are NFTs. And here we hope also for, in the future, a supervision that is aligned with what is happening in the industry, that also understand the technical aspects of the industry, and that will respond to this, to what is happening very timely. Maybe if I can give just an example, we have seen a lot of unfortunate examples of different companies not being very successful in handling their operations lately. And I think what is very important for everyone to understand is, like, what is the difference with, like, CeFi, as we said, or TradeFi and DeFi, and what are actually the technical parts of, let's say, smart contracts, how do they function, and what kind of information does also the consumer have when you think about open source blockchain. We think that the asymmetry of information is not the same as in centralized entities, because they're open. There's a lot of information that we can get only from the blockchain. And I do remember when the Commission wrote the report, a financial report, looking into how can blockchain be used also in reporting, how can blockchain be used in the supervision. And I think that including this technical aspect is very important, because it can facilitate the discussion and the communication between crypto as a service providers and the supervisors in the future.
I know, Pierre, you wanted to come in. Presumably, you know, your business also can bring some solutions to the marketplace with all that's happening, and what is it?
Yeah, sure. We are planning to cover to track NFTs and to provide AML for NFTs. But even if today it's already possible to check with the Scorechain which kind of funds have bought NFT. But I think we are talking about NFTs, we're talking about DeFi, but still some startups are fighting to open a bank account. So. Also we just have a new Euro stablecoin. I think Group Casino launched a LUG, but Coinbase is almost ready to launch some kind of Euro stablecoin. And we are late in terms of development and sovereignty in Europe for all this kind of basis, I think. How we can start a startup and we can use a Euro stablecoin and connect with the financial industry or facilitate the usage of crypto. So I'm sure that, and I fully agree with you, that technology could be an advantage for regulation, because but we need to understand, and I think also there's a lack of understanding. And if we quickly, if you talk about travel rule, for instance, travel rule, it's not we don't need a cut and paste of what is existing for fiat currencies. We need to understand how blockchain can help to facilitate the tracking and the exchange of information between players. So, but yeah, not many things to say. But
right, thanks, Pierre. Anne-Sophie, so from your perspective, what's one of the big challenges, opportunities ahead, and
yeah, so for us, it's mainly, you know, I still have people asking me if I comply with MiFID, with EMIR, etc. So it's fine, but we all understand that we need regulation, but we need a specific regulation. So no, I can't comply with MiFID. No, I can't comply with EMIR, because the market is not the same, so I can't have the same standards. However, we believe in Flowdesk that the next step will be the security tokens. To do this, we need to have a regulation that is complementary with what we know at the moment regarding MiCA, etc. So we need a next step which will allow us to deal with the securities token, which is kind of a different technology, but still we will have some regulatory standards that are more like in what we know in traditional finance. So it's important for us to have something that is really adapted to our needs. It should not be a threat for new joiners in the business, because there will still be a need for NFT, for everything like that, but we also believe that we will need the traditional finance to do the step, to come to us and come to crypto finance, because we are quite kind of complementary. We need to work together. And to do this, regulation, I know it is a step, because banks will not allow themselves to work with us if they are not allowed to do so by the regulators. They need the regulators, they need the states, so we need also the states and the regulator to understand what we need and what we can do and do the best. So just keep the best standards. And also I think that if you look at the goals of the different governments, it's the same, actually. AML, it's for everyone. We are in Singapore, we are applying to the license there, and we need AML regulation. We are working on the travel rule, because there it is already a rule that is in force. So the standards that we see also coming to France, it's not new, actually. It's with Singapore, we are working on it. The standards are not the same, but it's the same logic. We want the same thing. It's the same for market abuse. We are all fighting against market abuse. However, the market is not ready it is not mature. We can't have the same EMIR regulation in crypto and in traditional finance. So it just starts. It's managing expectation regarding the regulation. We want to do our best, but our best is not the same as in traditional finance. And regarding what we do in AML, I'm sure that the industry is more clean than what we see in some traditional industries. So I can follow my Bitcoin from its birth to what it is doing today. And that's a great tool, and I think that maybe people don't see the strengths we have regarding AML regulation.
Thanks. Can we just stop on the stablecoin side as well, just to, clearly we've got a digital euro agenda, central bank currency developments that we know about. There seems to be a perception from some policy quarters that there is some inconsistency between that project and, say the euro-denominated private stablecoin world. That euro-denominated private stablecoin world is dwarfed by the USD side of the private stablecoin world. As we know, there was a debate on geopolitics of it. There's debate in Europe about growing the international role of the euro, which Jan knows well. So how do we make the two work together, and what are the problems, you think? Who wants to pick it up? Maybe Marina? Or?
What I would say is interoperability. That is definitely the very important word when we think about the digital euro and blockchain, and let's say DeFi again. So I think that we have a very clear path forward, at least the Commission, the European Union, the European Central Bank. The European Digital Euro has been a really, really important project, and what we are aiming for is really to have more discussion about interoperability and to make this work for the whole European Union. It is a very important topic because it's going to be the currency that the Europeans are going to use. And what is different now, it's going to be especially concerning the privacy part. Privacy has been discussed in the TFR negotiations quite a lot. We have seen a lot of added articles that are reflecting those concerns at the beginning of the negotiations. So I think that from our perspective, definitely, again, interoperability and privacy.
Right, thanks. Did you want to say something, Anne-Sophie?
Yeah, we are dealing with many currencies. With Flowdesk, we don't have security because it's forbidden, but we still have utility tokens. We have some tokens which are on some stable, so on gold, etc. So that's some things that we see. And the main part for a token is to be transparent. We need to know what it is doing, how it is managed. So what we say in French is that there is two kinds of codes. There is the informatic codes, and there is also the legal code. And both of them have to meet at some point. And I know that a retail investor won't understand if the USDT is how it manages its peg. It's not really his job to understand that, but it is a job of the company to make the people understand how it is working. So seeing it not really like an investment, but like a useful tool, because you need stablecoin, we need it in the market. We still have to be transparent and to be fair with also our investor and clients.
Right, thanks. Jan, from your perspective, I mean, clearly MiCA is not the end of the road, as I was saying at the beginning, it's just the beginning in effect. But how are you planning on, tracking the whole DeFi developments? I know there's requirements in the regulation to provide reports on a regular basis, etc., part of the review. But just on that, just on the follow-ups to DeFi, how are you kind of organizing to do that? And also maybe if you could say a few words about the kind of open finance in the future, other things that you see potentially impacting the crypto sector. There's probably a little bit in PSD2, probably the open finance I don't think touches on this, but there's a lot of data related issues that could be relevant. It'd be great on digital euro. Just your thoughts on DeFi and then the kind of future agenda on digital finance.
Yeah, Thanks. I mean, I think, again, first of all, one should not underestimate that MiCA is now, it's on the, well, it is not even yet on the law books, but it will be soon, but that is, it is not implementation. So I think I would not underestimate, indeed, still also the task of making this also indeed reality. So I think that will certainly be something which will be challenging on the one hand. But on the other hand, which will also, I think, maybe, let's say, in the sense of learning by doing, address a bit the points which you also mentioned, that we all need to learn, and also that applies, I think, for the public, it applies for authorities as well, it applies for the market. I think by applying this framework, we will all be learning by doing in a way, and I think that is important. That will further kind of familiarize the regulatory, the supervisory community, and in a way the crypto community with each other. And I think that's for me quite important. We will also indeed look at decentralized finance. That is, I think, was the choice of the European Parliament and the Council, that indeed MiCA, and we agreed with that MiCA is indeed focused on centralized projects, and decentralized finance will have to be looked at. I think that is the right approach, and we will do this now in the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years, also in the international sphere. A number of organizations, IOSCO, the Financial Stability Board, will do that. A couple of jurisdictions are, of course, doing that as well. So I think what is necessary here, first of all, is still further analytical work, indeed, on what are actually the risks in the sector. Also, indeed, how can, let's say, a supervisory approach to this sector actually work? What are the possibilities? To what extent can traditional legislation be applied? I mean, that is not something which is just by putting the label decentralized, you cannot exclude that. In some instances, it can be applied. And if that's not the case, well, what is then the right approach? So I think that will really be more a kind of analytical work, and I think a work we will also want to really work closely with the sector and with the market to have an exchange there. I think that's quite important. Then going forward, indeed, I think there are a couple of other areas where we now want to, let's say, move on quite soon. Indeed, open finance is one of them. I think that's probably a much broader topic, indeed, going quite beyond crypto. Indeed, the idea to encourage further, say, data sharing among financial institutions and beyond financial firms, which is also part, in a way, of a broader, say, data sharing agenda, which we want to promote from the European Commission. So that's certainly something on which we just consulted now. We're now really wanting to also look at the feedback we received and read and see what are the best tools, indeed, to actually to encourage this data sharing and to also create trust there. And then certainly also from our side, we'll also support the work on the digital euro, which also was mentioned by the necessary regulatory framework. I think on that one, maybe also to shortly comment and react on it. From my perspective, I don't think public money, I think public money is important, and that's what the digital euro is. It is public money, which is quite different than private money. It is not, let's say, there to satisfy all our payment needs, so it is not there to crowd out private solutions, and that's very important. I would also, in any debate, whether that's on traditional payments, whether that is on crypto, DLT-based payments, in a way, I would not neither fear nor hope that the digital euro will address all use cases and solve all problems. I think if you have an issue and a need, basically, the first is still, in a way, the private sector to develop solutions there. And I think public money needs to complement private solutions, but I would warn anybody to indeed to expect that it will solve all problems, tackle all use cases, and that would also not be, let's say, wise and fair, because indeed, I think private solutions, private innovation also can quite often work even better than the public one. So I think that's very important, indeed, this complementarity. The digital euro is important, but it is not going to address all needs and, let's say, solve all problems. And in that sense, I think now that the MiCA framework is in place, I mean, we do hope that, and expect also in a way that a couple of, let's say, private stablecoin projects will also, let's say, be developed and grow into this regulatory compliance here as well. And maybe grow in that sense also the market for that. Thanks.
Commission always has the last word, so I'll stop the panel here. I think we've slightly gone over time, so just join me in thanking the panelists, and I think there is a next session for Stine. So thanks very much for your attention. Thanks, panelists.